Hey guys, how y'all doing? BionicleSaurus here, and in this video I am going to be expressing some of my general thoughts and compliments and criticisms and all that regarding the 2019 Safari Limited figures that we have seen thus far. So at the moment there are 6 Safari Limited prehistoric animal figures for 2019 that have been revealed rather early. I am so very thankful to be one of the 3 people that received early production samples for these figures. It's been an absolutely amazing experience, and I'm so excited that I could be a part of bringing these figures to the public and showing them off to the world for the first time. However, in this video, I'm not going to be talking about the 2 figures that I got. I'm merely going to be talking about the 4 that I don't have in hand, because the 2 that I do have in hand will get their own individual reviews that will be much more in-depth than this video can be. So for now, I'm just going to be talking about the woolly rhino, the Carnotaurus, the Psittapati, and the Styracosaurus, because I don't have those in hand, so I can't really review them. So I'm just going to make one quick video to express the thoughts I have about them, purely based on the pictures and videos that we have of them. Alright, so the first person who actually posted up a video unboxing some of these new figures from Safari was Spino Dude Reviews, and the first figure we see in his video is the brand new Carnotaurus, so we're going to start with that. Personally, I have mixed feelings about the Carnotaurus. It's one of those figures where overall I like it, but there are specific small things that do really get to me. So to address some of the major criticisms I've heard of it, okay, so the torso isn't bulky enough and the legs are too bulky. Everyone pretty much agrees on that. Specifically, sort of the back pelvic region and the tail base are a bit thin, whereas the legs are too thick and the feet are too large. I agree. It is a little bit off-putting from some angles. Carnotaurus was, in terms of ecological niche, very similar to a cheetah or a very fast, light-built, but still large predator. So seeing one that's a little more bulky like this is certainly more in line with a lot of its pop culture representation, unfortunately, and not necessarily the most accurate. Now, there is, of course, a very obvious practical reason for why they made specifically the legs look the way they do. They had to make the feet bigger so that it could stand up, and they had to make the legs bulkier so that they would look more in proportion with the feet. I still think that thickening up the tail base could really benefit the look of this figure. I don't know how many changes they can make to these figures from now until final release, so that may be way too much to ask, and I think it's important to keep that in mind this whole video. I really don't know just how different the final products can be from what we're looking at now, but for the record, that is the major proportional thing for me. Is I understand why the legs have to look this way. I think it'd be nice to see thin legs on a base, but as it is, I do like having it without a base. I see the benefits of that, so I think the main easiest improvement that could be made to the overall proportions and silhouette of the Carnotaurus would be to bulk up the rear half of the torso and the base of the tail, which would not only, I think, make it slightly more accurate, but it would help to alleviate how big the legs and feet look. If the torso was also bulky, the whole thing would look a little more consistent, and the big feet probably wouldn't be as distracting. Another thing that bugs me is the hands. I think the arms are about the right length, which is great, because many Carnotaurus figures don't realize just how short Abelosaurid arms were, but the hands are very big, the fingers are splayed out, and from some angles, especially the right arm and hand, just look plain goofy to me. Like he's just kind of sticking out like doing jazz hands or something. I don't know. It's a bit odd. A final thing that I should probably talk about is the head sculpt. The head sculpt is incredibly close to being right. I think it's slightly too long. A general rule of thumb for Carnotaurus skulls is that the skull should have about as much space behind the eye as in front of the eye, and that's not quite the case here. The skull is very close, the shaping is very good, but the snout, despite being short, I think could stand to be even shorter. Now, despite all of these critiques, I really am not going to be all that disappointed if none of them are addressed in the final product. I totally understand if it's too late to make changes like that, and to be honest, none of these are really all that big of a deal, because overall, to me, when I just look at this figure, when I don't focus in on the things that bug me and just look at it as a whole and just take it in, It just looks gorgeous. The pose is fluid, it's a well-balanced biped, of course, you know I'm all a sucker for that, and for good reason in my opinion. The detail is amazing, it has some of the smallest, most well-sculpted individual scales I've ever seen in my life. A final thing I should probably mention is the size. I personally don't mind the size. I don't know, lately I've been getting over the whole obsession with having things close to being in scale, if not perfectly in scale. I don't mind that this appears to be on the big side. Yeah, overall, when I just look at this, it's beautiful. The pose, the coloration, it's an incredible thing to look at, just as a piece of art. Next up, we have the woolly rhino. I don't have much to say about this. I'm not an expert on mammalian anatomy at all, so I really can't talk about accuracy, although from what I can tell, it's quite good in that regard. In terms of detail and paint and sculpting, I think the pose is a little awkward. It's one of those figures where like the back legs are really striding out wide, but then the front legs are closer together. It makes it look a little awkward in the way that he would potentially be moving, but it's really not too bad. Other than that, I do wish the horns were a different color from the fur. I think that's a bit odd. Really though, that's it. This thing is a 9.5 out of 10, very close to being a 10 out of 10. I'll definitely be picking it up. I think it's gotta be one of the most beautiful mammals I've ever seen from Safari. Okay, so moving on to the next two figures, the other person besides myself and Spino Dude who received some early production samples of some 2019 Safari LTD prehistoric animals was none other than Kayakasaurus, and he got the Psittapatty and the Styracosaurus. So let's start with the Psittapatty. I will say this figure has really grown on me. When I first saw it, I didn't think much of it. I wasn't overly impressed, but the more I look at the photos of it and even look at some more video of it from him, you can tell it's a Doug Watson sculpt, and really, the way all the feathers are done is just incredible. It's not perfect. I think some of the areas look a little bland in terms of, like some of it looks a little toy-like. Like it could use some more staining or almost weathering, I guess, if that's the term I'm going for. Specifically, some of those areas of chestnut brown feathers, especially on the tail, just look a little bit bland. There are some areas that are a little bit too thick, probably for stability purposes. The legs are a bit thick, the feet are a bit big, the wing feathers are a bit on the thick side. If it had a more delicate gracile overall look and proportion to it, I think that'd be an improvement, but practically I see why it was made this way. I really love the colors. It's a great looking biped in terms of posture and the stride of it walking. I think it's a great looking figure. It's rather large apparently too, which is interesting. One thing I really want to say about this is that I still prefer the Anzu in terms of paint. The Anzu that came out this year, I think it has a better color scheme and better paint application, but this figure beats the heck out of the Anzu in terms of mold and sculpt and pose. So I will be picking up both. I think the Anzu has such pretty colors, I do want it in my collection, but I'm more excited about this one. In my opinion, this is a better done Oviraptorid overall. Okay, so finally we come to the Styracosaurus, and the Styracosaurus, I really don't have much to say about it that hasn't already been said. The color scheme is really unique and interesting and really looks good. The paint application and the way the color scheme was actually executed is amazing. The paint job is really one of the most nuanced, complex, and colorful paint jobs we've ever seen on a Safari Ceratopsid. In terms of paint, this is the best one. In terms of mold, it is very close to the best one. I think I still prefer the Nasuto Ceratops's sculpt a little bit, but this amazing second place sculpt combined with first place paint job really brings this to being possibly my new favorite Safari Ceratopsid. The one thing that really put me off about this figure when I first saw it were those frill horns, because they have a lot of curvature to them. And while Styracosaurus frill horns did curve a bit back, not nearly that much. And in my opinion, it just sort of, it made it so that it didn't quite capture that classic Styracosaurus look. Now, since then, Doug Watson has said on the Dino Toy Forum that this was most likely a bit of shipping, warping from heat and things like that, and that it should look better when it's the final product. Again, these are all essentially prototypes, so certain quality control-based things, we probably shouldn't worry too much about at this point. But still, it's a minor, but very distracting issue in my opinion. I'm probably the most annoyed by it out of a lot of the people in the community. Most people kind of don't seem to mind it as much as I do. I don't mean to be a stick in the mud about it, because otherwise this figure is just beautiful and amazing, and one of possibly my favorite ceratopsian figure by any company, period. If they can fix those horns, it'll really be an absolute masterpiece in my eyes. Alright, so that is all I have to say about the woolly rhino, the Carnotaurus, the Psittipati, and the Styracosaurus for now. As always, a huge thank you has to go out to Safari Limited for letting me be a part of this. Please go check out their website, safariltd.com, and their Amazon page, amazon.com/safariltd. You can buy any of their currently released products there. Not these just yet, unfortunately, but very soon, hopefully. Obviously, I will eventually pick these all up myself when they are all officially released and give them full reviews, but for now, it's time for me to film some full in-depth review videos for the new Safari Ltd 2019 Camarasaurus and Prestosuchus, which I do have in hand. Those should be coming out next week. Thank you very much for watching, and BionicleSaurus signing out.